welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Adam from Miller's Custom Guitars and the N+1 podcast. I'm actually wearing my Miller's Custom Guitars hat today. I'm so glad you could tune in today. I've got a great guest today. I'm so excited to talk to our guest today. If you are new to the show, this show is all about hobbies, passions, and obsessions. And I just bring on amazing guests from all different interests and fields. I just want to talk to everybody. I want to talk to people and find out what they're passionate about. What I've found is that people are just passionate about things. And when you talk to people who are passionate, it's hard to get them to stop talking about the things that they're passionate about. And I've always been the person that just wants to find out, that wants to learn. You talk to people who are passionate about the things that they're passionate about. And it's just, I've always found that so interesting. I've always been a person with a bunch of different hobbies: guitar, woodworking, cooking, making YouTube videos, servicing guitars, working on guitars, teaching others how to work on guitars, music, a bunch of different things. Talking to people about their hobbies, learning about them has just been so interesting to me. And then on this show, I always want to talk to these guests and find out not just what their passion is, but also what is next on the horizon. And that's why I talk to every guest about not just what they're working on, but what is next. N+1. How many guitars is enough guitars? N+1. There's always room for one more guitar on the stand, one more guitar in the collection. So that's what we talk to every guest about. And today I am so excited to bring on an amazing guest. This is a person I've met a couple years ago at a conference. He is a musician. He is part of the Christian rock and worship group Kutless. He wasn't a founding member, but he joined the team a number of years ago. And I just want to talk to him about what it's like to be kind of like on the front lines of being a rock musician, especially in the Christian music field. And I just wanted to talk to him and get his feel on that. He's also a solo artist. He's released a couple of punk rock albums that kind of rock. I've listened to a couple of them, and I wanted to get his talk to him about those. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Nate Parrish. We'll bring him on and we'll talk to him. Well, thank you so much for coming, Nate. This is so happy to introduce Nate Parrish, who is a musician. He is part of the band Kutless. He's one of my first big name guests. So there we go.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So welcome, Nate. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, man, for sure.
And you are a musician, you're a worship leader, you're a rock and roll musician. How about that? We met a couple of years ago we met right before COVID. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
It was like literal days
Yep.
before the lockdown.
It was, so we went there from Bakersfield, and because I used to live in Modesto, and I remember getting a text from one of my really good friends who was leading worship, because we weren't there, at like 6 a.m. that Sunday when we had the last day of the conference. He's like, man, I'm super sick. I don't know if I can sing. I don't know what we're good. I mean, I'm too far away. And so looking back, I was like, I think he had COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I remember we knew it was serious and things were serious, and there was a little bit of joking around about it. But I remember those conferences, they were always in like early March.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was probably like the 7th. I know because they're always like the same weekend as my nephew's birthday.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think his birthday is March 7th.
It sounds about right.
In-laws, don't kill me if it's not the same. But I remember, and I didn't like the whole world close on the 14th or something like that. It was just, it was, but I remember meeting you that weekend, and I sat in on one of your breakout sessions, and you and your wife had a really great breakout session. And anyway, that's where we met to talk about worship. But I wanted to talk to you because you've had an interesting path where you joined the band Kutless. And if you're listening to the show, you don't know what Kutless is, they are a Christian band. They're a rock band that also does worship music. I was looking at the catalog, and you guys you kind of go back and forth between releasing like rock records and like worship records. And you weren't a founding member of that band. You kind of stepped up and joined that band a couple of years ago. And I just wanted to talk to you because I haven't really had someone that's just like, hey, I'm in a rock band, and I wanted to see what that was a little bit about. And you're also releasing solo music, and just see what that's about. But I wanted to say, and I like to start every podcast by just saying, to tell us what you do and a little bit of who you are, and we'll kind of go from there.
I'm Nate. What's up? I think I just really love music and creative expression in general. So I've had like a interesting path to music, and doing the things that I've been able to do just because I say yes to opportunities. My philosophy has always been to, walk through open doors. God opens a door, I walk through it, and it's the wrong one, he'll push me out. So
Sure.
Yeah, that's really mostly how I've ended up doing anything. Though I met Kutless from being a part of a worship band that was from Modesto, actually, and we did a tour with them, and I became friends with James, the guitar player. Funny story, if you actually look on YouTube, you type in Nate from Kutless, or Nathan, I think, from Kutless. There's a video I made in 2008. It's like a parody about me joining Kutless. And then 7 years later, it actually happened. So I don't know what that means, but yeah. So I met those guys, and then just through a series of events, called me up and, hey, do you want to play guitar? It's like, yeah. So it's weird. I don't know how I got here apart from just trying to listen to God's voice and taking chances, really. So
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know if that says who I am. Maybe it does. Yeah. I'm Nate Parrish. I take chances.
I love that. That's great. And you're still with Kutless, right?
Yeah.
And they tour much? They play shows very much, or
we haven't been lately. The guys were working on a lot of stuff. They were working on new music, and a podcast and all that stuff. They've been on a break as of late. So I sort of just, I'm like, whenever they need me, call, I go. So
nice.
We still talk and everything, but so they're just kind of working on stuff still,
Nice.
which is cool. It gives me a chance to work on solo stuff and everything like that. But
nice. And then I ask every guest this, which is like this thing that you do of being in bands and making music. I always say, describe it like I'm 5. Like what's the nugget? How would you just describe what it is?
Like the process, or just the life of a musician?
Yeah, sure. That's a good.
A lot of it, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, actually. A lot of it is just being okay with, you get a lot more no's than you get yeses. Because I know, especially in like social media, you just post your W's. You're not posting a lot of L's on Instagram. So definitely. People think, well, it's just, you just go and play shows and it's no problem. I get turned down for stuff more often than I get like calls back. You know what I'm saying? So It's a lot of tenacity. A life of anything, any person that wants to do anything creative or entrepreneur, what's the word I'm looking for? Wants to be an entrepreneur, DIY, anything like that. It's a life of getting tough skin, but soft heart kind of thing. You're going to get a lot of doors shut in your face, but you just got to keep going. And so I think that's a lot of it. A life of the musician is a lot of, it keeps you humble, which you think it's the opposite. Like, oh, you probably get really arrogant because you're on stage. It's like, I think a lot of it is just getting humbled a lot. I'm like, especially as a solo artist now, and sort of, playing with Kutless is one thing. Like people know that. But being a solo artist, they're like, who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm playing Kutless. Like, oh, can you bring Kutless? Like, no, it's just me. It's me and my band, you know. So it's a lot of that. I'm actually doing a show with Matt Baird from Spoken
Oh wow.
in a couple of weeks, an acoustic show,
Oh
and
nice. That's awesome.
I'm playing like Nate Parrish stuff, but I'm going to throw in one Kutless song, just one, because you have to, right? But
Sure.
yeah, yeah, being a creative is a lot of it tests you a lot. You know, it's personal. You create art, it's personal. Like, you know that meme of the otter holding his guitar?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that one where it's basically like you show someone your song you worked really hard on, and then they're like, cool, and then they move on to the next subject? It's kind of what it's like.
Like most art is like that. It's like, here's this thing I slaved over.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah.
You write a song and they're like,
yeah.
oh, that's cool. It reminds me of this other band that I like better. Like, oh, cool. All right.
Yeah, it's like art is so subjective, you know.
Yeah.
It's like that. You know, you mentioned that you're gonna do a Kutless song, but I mean, like it's like an age old tradition of bands doing great covers of other bands. You're just doing the thing, you know. And I remember one of my favorite bands of all time, like literally their best song, the song they were best known for, was just a cover of another song, but they just kicked its butt, you know. That song.
That's true.
Yeah. And you were talking about starting your own thing. It's kind of like an established YouTuber starting a new channel.
Yeah.
You know, like you start at zero, man. You have if you have 1 million subs and you start a new thing, you say you're still starting at zero, man.
Yeah, there's some like carryover. Like if
yeah, sure.
If someone knows
established fan base,
yeah, if someone knows that.
Yeah.
But for me, in my particular case, the genres are they're adjacent-ish.
Of course,
they're not
yeah.
They're different, so there's not always that exact carryover. But you know, it's cool.
Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to mention is that you said that on social media we post the highlights. You know, that is no joke. There, I had certain Facebook friends. I literally had to not block them, but I literally had to hide them because the jealousy factor was just too high. I couldn't.
Yeah.
It's like I know that internally. You know, you're just seeing the highlights. You're not seeing, you know, the bickering and the fighting and the low points and all that stuff. But, you know, you're just seeing the trips to Hawaii and the happy family sitting around the dinner table and all that stuff. And I'm like, I can't deal with it.
Yeah. I may just pick a week or a month and just post L's every day.
That's good.
Here's all my L's. I'm human. Everyone's human.
That's amazing. So being a musician and like a rock musician, like you're a rock musician, right? What are some misconceptions that people have, or maybe that you've found that maybe you had?
One funny one is, so my solo project is, people ask me a lot, is it Christian? Well, music isn't Christian.
Right.
I'm a Christian.
Yes.
So do with that what you will, but there's such a broad, like, I live 24 hours every day and I think about all kinds of stuff from a Christian perspective. So I'm going to write about all kinds of things that I care about. It may not just, you're not going to sing it in church probably, but it's still from a Christian worldview. So when I play, because I play mostly secular stuff, I play a lot of punk shows and things like that. And we'll be talking to different guys in bands, and they're like, so what do you do? I was like, oh, I work at a church, and it's like a record scratch, you know. And they start to like straighten up, put their beer down or whatever. I'm like, oh, you don't have to be weird. Like, it's fine. So that happens quite a bit, but then you also have really cool conversations. I played a show last night actually, and was talking about with one of the other artists about how they grew up in church, but musically they couldn't connect with the music in church. And I was like, yeah, I'm the same way. It's a lot of why I do what I do now is because when I was growing up, I didn't see any of that. There was I didn't feel like there was anything for someone like me that I could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
another one
definitely.
of those philosophies is, well, if you notice a problem, it may be because you're supposed to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
So I tried to do something about it. But yeah, so that happens a lot. They'll, oh wait, they're like, are you a pastor? No, I preach, but they're like, oh, okay, okay, sorry. They cuss and they're like, oh, I'm sorry. You don't have to. It's fine.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great story. Um, what are maybe some of the biggest challenges that you've maybe faced, or maybe you can tell us of maybe a particular bad experience that you've experienced along your journey?
Man, there's been a lot of both really good and some really bad stuff. Um, you know, it's kind of, popular. Being in like musician circles with Christian musicians and stuff, it's really popular to sort of trash like the Christian music industry as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yep.
I see a lot of those posts of people, oh man, they're just like the secular, they're worse. Actually, I get that a lot. The Christian industry is worse, and all these things. And I've seen my fair share of rough stuff, some dishonesty and some lack of integrity type stuff in the music
Yeah.
business. But honestly, it's just because humans do bad stuff. It's not a specific to any one person, group, or belief system. Um, but I've gone on a big tour. One of the big ones that really sucked was heading out on like a 2-month tour. So I had quit my job. Uh, I had a little side job and I quit because I was going to be gone for 2 months. And they're like, well, we'll see when you come back. Maybe we'll bring you back.
Okay.
It was a really good job. Well, I went on the tour and it got canceled after like 10 days.
No.
Because the promoter canceled the tour because he wasn't getting the ticket sales that he thought he should. And then he kept the money and didn't pay us.
Oh, that's horrible.
So if you're not familiar with how your audience, how being in a band full time works, so you go to a job and you get paid every 2 weeks. Well, if you're in a full time touring band, you get paid. You basically make all your money for the year in like a few months.
Mm.
So it's like feast or famine kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Because think about it, if you're gone for 2 months on a tour, you're making a big chunk of money. Well, you're not going to turn around probably and tour another 2 months, like a week later or something like that.
Right, sure.
So, and then you're going to have time off for Christmas and times where you're not going to really go play shows. So you have to watch your money,
Sure.
And so when you plan on a tour that's, 2 months out of the year and it's supposed to give you this amount of money because you signed a contract, and then they don't give you that money, it's like,
wow,
getting fired, but also not being able to get a job again. All that money's gone.
That's harsh, man.
It was tough. It was a tough one. So that was probably the worst. I've had some other experiences, but that one I can remember was pretty bad.
Wow.
I've never been like a depressed person, but looking back, I think it sent me into a bit of a depression. My wife will tell me that. I can't see it because I'm in it.
You're in it, sure.
But she was watching. She's like, "Oh, you were super depressed." I was like, "Really?" She was like, "Yeah." Oh. So it was dark. It was a dark time, but.
So you just told a story, and that was that's rough, man. We talked about maybe a bad thing, but what about this whole thing, about your whole thing? What about that fills your bucket? Why do you do it?
Oh man. Well, for me, music in particular is a great way to express frustrations and doubts and fears and things like that. It really helps me process. I'm not a huge open up and talk about my feelings kind of guy, but I can put it in a song.
Sure.
And then just like, man, meeting fans or people that connect with your music it's always kind of unbelievable to me that anyone listens to my music, let alone likes it. So getting messages from people that, oh, this song really helped me. It's wow, oh, that's really cool. There was one time when I moved to Bakersfield, there was a guy came to our church, and his daughter was a big Kutless fan, and she had a disability, so she didn't really leave the house very much. He asked me if I would come visit her. I was like, absolutely. And I went over to their house, to this family's house. I don't know them. I just went over there, and sure enough, her room was filled with like posters and all Kutless stuff. Like, whoa. And it was really cool. I got to spend time with her and just talk, just hang out. And her family was super appreciative. So, man, that keeps you going for years, something like that. So, I love that, being able to. It's weird because I just think, I'm a normal person, but if someone gets hope or encouragement from me talking to them, I'll do it.
That's incredible, man. What a great story. Do you have whether it's in your role with Kutless or maybe just as a musician, do you have something that you might consider a signature move?
It's the power stance.
Besides just wearing your guitar all the way down to your knees, and like.
I think it's the power stance. I mean, that even when I lead worship on Sunday mornings, it's still there. And they used to, when I first started, doing worship in my church, people were they're like, wow, you're like doing the splits. And I was like, oh, I don't even think twice because it's just how I play.
I will concur. I will second this because I have seen you play a couple times, and you're always, it's your legs spread, your guitar is super low. I don't know, I understand electric guitar, but I don't know how you play acoustic guitar that low.
Yeah, honestly, I played this acoustic show last night, and I raised my guitar up because I'm like,
there you go.
I should probably focus more on the notes on this one. But yeah, no, I like when we do the church club. I mean, my guitar's still down. It's just that's the way I learned, honestly. When I got a guitar, I started on electric. So a lot of people start on acoustic first, but I was like, no, I'm going to start rocking right away. Yeah. And all my favorite bands and musicians, that's how they played. So that's just what I did.
Who are your influences in your musical influences?
Pretty broad, but overall, it's mostly coming from the punk genre. Mike Ness of Social Distortion is a big one for me. Johnny Ramone. I loved MXPX when I was first getting into music, and then like Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan. Yeah, those guys.
Yeah, I could definitely tell a lot of punk influences in your music for sure. Do you have any what you might call like guilty pleasures
of music?
Yeah, or just in whatever, like something where, like, if someone saw you doing it, they'd be like, "Nate, what is going on?" But you don't care, you do it anyway.
Oh, yeah, a few things. I collect action figures. So
nice.
This is my studio / office. So that's like the recording booth right there.
Oh, nice.
But it's full of toys.
I saw that you left it open, and I kept being afraid that there was going to be a kid that would barge through there. Yeah. And I'm like, are you sure you're going to leave that open, man?
No, I was tracking a song, and then I saw your message, and I was like, but yeah, so collecting action figures, and I wouldn't say I'm guilty about it, but and also musically, I really like soft rock, like yacht rock. I really do. It's kind of embarrassing, like my Spotify Wrapped. I didn't share it because it's embarrassing, but you expect to like a lot of punk and metal, and it's like not that.
I wanted to ask you, I actually have a ongoing series on this channel where we've been talking to church leaders. I talked to Adam Delhonick. I talked to Adam, and I talked to Ryan Lochi. Mm-hmm. I've talked to a number of people. I've talked to modern church leaders about how the modern church is interacting with our modern culture. Kutless is kind of part of that conversation. And I'm just trying to, that's like not the point of our conversation. I just want to talk to you about being a rock and roll musician. Okay. But you're in the mix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, is Christianity still relevant? You talked about, sometimes Christians are worse, right? You mentioned that earlier. Is Christianity still relevant? How do we as Christians, still try to fulfill the Great Commission in a world that's increasingly dismissive and hostile to Christianity?
Yeah, I think, I think the time is kind of over when you get social credit for going to church. Like it's not a cool thing.
Right, definitely.
Oh, cool. You go to church. Good. Congrats. I think staying relevant and all that stuff, I can't put a lot of stock into that because times change. And so trying to keep up with things is just a losing battle. I think what has hurt the church is that we put too much emphasis on too much burden on the church to do the evangelizing.
Yes.
So,
right.
Well, if I just get my friend to church, he'll become a Christian. Like, no, he won't.
Right.
That doesn't do anything. It's just a building, and it's not going to mean anything unless you, the person that actually has a relationship with him, not only talks about it, but your life matches that. And when it doesn't, you're honest about it, because it's not always going to match. We're always going to miss the mark and screw up and be poor representatives. It's going to happen. But it's just about being honest about it, And so I think to quote unquote stay relevant is just the people, the body, like the humans that are Christians, are the ones who are we need to have the personal responsibility in our own circles to represent Christ and focus on that, and not just try to make the church cool, because it's not, or try to get people into a building by doing a really cool Christmas concert. Like, okay, they could watch that on TV. What don't they have is the pure gospel message spoken to them from a person that they know and trust.
And they don't have his Jesus. And they need Jesus, man, because Jesus is the thing, man. Like I'm 100% with you. It's like just exactly what you said. It's like, hey, hey, they'll come to church and they'll be saved, or hey, I'll pay a missionary and they'll go pay. They'll just get them saved. Like, yeah, 100%, man. Like we need to live our lives in a way that preaches the gospel.
Yeah.
And hey, man, I'm not there. I need to be better, man. And.
Well, it's getting yourself into situations and places that normal people are at. You're not gonna reach anyone by, hiding yourself away and being afraid of the secular world.
For sure. Yeah, and a lot of times Christians, hey man, we live in our bubbles, man.
Yeah,
we go to our church and we hang out with our friends, and then we all eat at the same restaurant after church. How many times do you see that? You like leave, hey, and then you go to the restaurant and hey, look, it's all the people from church.
Right.
It happens all the time.
It's cool. I love that. I would never discount Christian community, but that's part of it.
Right.
And there's the other part.
This episode has been brought to you by us, the N+1 podcast. We're a small podcast. We thrive on the support of our listeners. And, we don't have sponsors. We don't promote anything. I'm not asking you to buy anything. I just pay for everything out of pocket here. And so the way that you can support this podcast is by sharing it with a friend. This is a great episode to share today as we talk to Nate Parrish from Kutless. Just share this episode with a friend, or any one of our great episodes. We talked to Becky Orbello, who made amazing, beautiful craft jewelry. we had on John C. Brown, who was an amazing actor, and talked about his process and getting into the roles that he's played. We talked to a Nashville session musician and what it's like to be in the studio and how he got there. And that was Blake Wren, and that was an amazing episode. We just talked to a bunch of different people about a bunch of different stuff. And if you could share this episode or any episode, that would be a great way to grow the show. And another way that you can show your thanks and your support is by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It helps the show out. I think I've got 60 subscribers or so. Let's get that number up. Let's get to 100. Let's get to 70. Heck, get the subscribers up. If you are listening on a podcast player, heck, give the show a heart. If someone sent this episode to you, give us a follow. If you like what you're hearing, you want to hear more, give us a follow, give us a heart. It helps the show. It helps us to grow. It helps us to get in the feed of other listeners. The last way that you can show your support for the show, if you're an established listener, you want to support the show, one way you can do that is to buy some merch. I'm right now wearing the Miller's Custom Guitars hat. We also have a N+1 podcast hat through our Redbubble store. The proceeds in that store go to support our homeschool, but the stuff that goes, the hats and the shirts, that'll go directly to help the podcast. And that is a way that you can help to support the show. Thank you so much, and I hope you are enjoying this conversation with Nate. Without further ado, we will get back to him. Thanks, guys. Going back to being a rock musician, do you have like a favorite or a best moment, something that you think back as just like, man, that was so great, that was so cool, I can't believe that happened, that was awesome?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'll tell you two. One was when I got the call to join Kutless.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. Like, that's freaking awesome, dude.
And at the time, I was doing music in another band, but it was like, it wasn't, because I went from a band that was touring the world, signed a record label, to that falling apart, doing another band that was local, but it was like worship and whatever. And so I kind of thought maybe, oh man, my journey is over in that, capacity. So when I got the call from Kutless and being able to, one of the shows we played was Joshua Fest, one of my early ones, and that's in California. But the drive up there, I got really like emotional about it because I had played there with my first band back in 2006, and that was our first show, was playing Joshua Fest in California. And then now 2015, I had a chance to go do it again as a headliner on the main stage with Kutless after I thought maybe my music career was over. And it was really, it struck me. I was like, man, God's good. So that was just like a one that I remember. And then we did a tour in Ukraine in 2016.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And it was actually supported by the government. And
that's awesome.
We got to do all these free shows at like a city, like it was all open air, and so it was, we did one show and there was like thousands of people there. It was huge. And we always preach the gospel and hands go up and that's awesome. But it was different because they didn't have freedom of religion until like the 90s.
Oh, wow.
And so when we went, it struck me, that John Micah, our vocalist, was preaching the gospel to people who literally have heard it. This is the first time.
Wow.
In America, you take it for granted because it's all over the place, but they weren't allowed to hear it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa. And you see all these hands go up and you're like, so this is like people hearing it for the first time in their life and responding to it in real time. And I get to be here. So that was pretty huge. And
dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. And yeah, that was a good one.
That dude, That's pretty
Yeah.
awesome, man. That's pretty awesome. Do you maybe have advice for beginners? Maybe someone that might want to, I don't know, be in a rock band.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, of course, practice, practice, practice. But I would say, I know when you start something, you want to shoot for the stars. And who doesn't want to start a band and have it be huge?
Right.
I don't know if anyone starts a band, they're like, I hope this is really small. And I hope we're just like average. So I definitely think you should go for that. Like, if you're going to do it, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's getting harder and harder to make it as a musician, as far as like touring and stuff like that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage, if you're going to do that, you should absolutely do it, because the worst thing is you'll fail, but you tried. Regret is much worse than failing at something, because regret will be like, oh, if you would have tried, you might have done it. So you might as well try and fail, because you might succeed too. And the other thing is just be creative with it. Now labels aren't as important as they were. You could really do whatever, and you could find creative ways to build an audience and things like that. And as far as from a Christian perspective, I would say just I started from a servant standpoint. So when I first got into worship, period, I was an intern in Modesto, and my job was to convert all the sermons from cassette to CD.
Okay.
That's all I did for a year. And the other people in the internship were like leading worship and recording, and I was just up there like listening to sermons and burning them onto CDs. So not glamorous at all, but I knew, I was like, if I can do this job that no one wants really, really well, then it builds a foundation that if it is time to do something on a stage, I can carry that same humility to that stage, hopefully, and that can keep me from being some arrogant rock star thing,
Yeah.
Because that's easy to do,
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to do. So I would say, just stay humble and serve others too.
It's one of my life mottos. I close every show with it. Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk.
You would think it's not that hard, but from what I've seen in life, it must be.
Yeah, it gets hard.
Okay, I have a segment on the show, and I try, if there's a way to get into our topic over the internet. Mm-hmm. We can't do it every show, but if there's a way to get into the topic, I say let's get into it. And I sent you, the show notes. I was wondering if you had any ideas of something we could do together over the internet. Did you have any ideas?
Let's get into it. Well,
I don't know.
One thing that I get asked about a lot is Batman lore and like best Batmans. Okay. Because I have a different take than a lot of people might have.
Okay.
I don't know if that counts, but
look, this does not relate to rock, but I am into it because I actually love Batman.
Oh, great!
But I'm down. So look, if you're not into Batman, you guys can skip ahead a couple minutes. But I'm super down for this. Go for it.
Yeah. So from a motion picture standpoint, let's include TV as well.
Okay.
Top three Batmen and why.
Top 3 Batman and why.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's animated series, of course.
Yeah.
That's like the all time. Dang it, his name escapes me. He passed away a year or two ago.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
I know, me too. I actually just bought
Conrad. Isn't his last name like Con?
Yes.
Dang it, I should know this.
Gosh, I know, me too. But I just got the Arkham Asylum trilogy for Switch. They just released it on Switch, and I'm just playing through it.
I'm gonna look it up. Kevin Conroy.
Kevin Conroy. That's right.
Yeah.
The goat.
The goat.
The Batman of all Batmans.
He's a good one.
Yes, I do love the animated series Batmans.
So that's your top one?
That's my number one.
Okay.
And I love the way that they carried him through into Justice League Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
And like my favorite line of all time is they're fighting Darkseid.
Mm.
Right. And he's out of batarangs, and Lex Luthor offers him a gun. They're fighting Darkseid, and he goes, "Not my style."
Not my style.
Like,
yeah.
Come on, like that to me, that's my Batman. Okay.
All right.
So that's my number one.
You ready for a hot take?
Okay, go for it.
This is what gets me in trouble. To contrast that, my favorite Batman, I do love the animated series. I'm thinking more movies, is Ben Affleck.
I thought he was a great Batman. They just released like all of the DCEU movies on Netflix, and I was rewatching them. I thought he was great.
Yeah,
I like the kind of grizzled, older, angry Batman. I thought he was awesome.
Well, I like him because my favorite representation of Batman is the Dark Knight series from Frank Miller.
Yes, I've read it many times.
Yeah, so like he's sort of coming out of retirement because he realizes he doesn't even like Bruce Wayne. He just wants to be Batman. He's like, he misses he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
In a world that doesn't need a Batman. So, and then he's just grizzled and he's breaking arms. And I love that. The problem people had is, he was in Batman versus Superman. They're like, oh, he doesn't use guns. Well, it's like, he technically does. The first Detective Comics, he has a handgun.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really that weird. Also, Michael Keaton's Batman killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was just more whimsical, right? He put a bomb in a guy's pants and threw him down his shaft.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, the thing is, and I went back a couple years ago and watched, the first Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Batman is not the main character of that movie.
Yeah.
Vicky Vale is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of
right.
Weird.
Vicky Vale is the main character of that movie. Batman he's like ancillary. That movie's about the reporter, right? It follows her story. It follows the reporter trying to find Batman and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And Batman is like what is going on. And I would say that Michael Keaton is maybe my favorite Bruce Wayne. He's not my favorite. He's not my favorite Batman. That might get me killed in the Batman apologist, but he's a great Bruce Wayne. But
yeah. I find a lot of people like Christian Bale, and I like him too. But my issue is he's too soft for me. I don't like. I didn't love his portrayal of Batman. It was just a little too Boy Scout for me, because after all, Batman is Batman because of severe tragedy, and he really becomes Batman out of vengeance.
Right.
Vengeance. Yeah. Right. So that's why I like the Affleck thing, and I didn't have a problem with him blowing people up because it was creating a story arc where if you watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, he goes from no hope and just ready to. He basically wants to die. He picks a fight with Superman so he can get killed, to telling Alfred, I have faith. Mm-hmm. Like, it's such a cool arc for Batman. And if it would have continued, he would go forward as the leader of the Justice League, and that's the Batman that people know, or they think they know. But without that arc, I feel like it doesn't carry, he doesn't earn it. I feel like it's way more earned if he goes from, it's like a redemptive arc, basically. So that's why I like that character.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, that was a great Batman aside. That was whatever. I would love to talk about Batman. That was great.
Yeah, dude.
I'm a huge Batman stan. So Nate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been lovely. You are a great guest.
Thank you.
But look, the point of the show, of course, Nate, how many guitars is enough guitars?
There isn't a number.
Yes, there is. Plus one. The number of guitars you currently have plus one, right?
Yeah.
That's what we talk about on this show with every guest is not just what you're into, what you're doing, but what is next? What's on the horizon?
Yes.
I want to know what you're working on. What's next? What have you got planned? Let's talk about it.
All right. Well, you'll probably be the first to hear this in the official capacity, but I have a single coming out February 23rd.
Nice.
It's the first single.
You heard it here first, folks.
You heard it here first. Coming. So it's a single from a new album that'll be out in 2024, and working with producer Josiah Prince for this album. He's a guitar player and disciple, and has made a bunch of really good rock albums, including the new Kutless stuff.
Nice.
He produced that. So that's what's literally coming up. A little over a month, I'll have new music out since 2022. So
that's amazing, and that's so that's on your solo.
Yeah,
it's part of your solo music.
Yep.
And then does Kutless have any music in the works? You mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah, there's I don't know how many songs, but yeah, there's songs in the works. They've been in the works, and they're still plugging away. Yeah, I don't have any concrete updates on that. I wish I did, but yeah, we're working on music.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we've been talking a lot about Kutless. Can you tell us a little bit about your solo projects?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I when I got into music, kind of like my own music, and I started playing music, I really loved the punk genre. I love the ferocity of it and the anti-establishment and all those fun things. So years later, 2019, I realized I've been writing and being a part of so many bands, but I haven't put out anything that was purely just me, like my thing,
Sure.
in a long time. So I decided to just home studio, sit down, write, record. Whatever comes out is what comes out. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to try to tailor it to a certain audience. It's going to be, it is what it is. And that's what I started doing. So I had a first album come out in 2020, and did surprisingly well. I was kind of blown away by the response of it, honestly. And put out another album in 2022. It actually was mentioned in Spin magazine as one of the top Christian rock albums of all time.
What?
It sounds like I'm making it up, but look it up. Look it up. Yeah.
We will put a link in the show notes to that, because that's amazing.
There's someone sent me a message like, "Congrats on Spin magazine," and I was like, "Did I buy a subscription? What are you talking about?" And I looked it up, and sure enough, there's like this. They wrote an article about top Christian rock albums, dating back to like the 70s or whatever.
What?
My album was there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was crazy. And so I've just been writing constantly for like the past 4 or 5 years, and I got new music coming up, and it's of the punk variety.
Yeah.
There's punk in there. It's
I was listening to it. It's very punk.
Yeah, it's very punk. The new stuff is, I would say it's still punk, but it's got a little bit more. I think it would just broaden the parameters a bit. So there'll be some stuff on there that you'll be like, oh, that sounded different, but
yeah. Well, that's awesome, and that's just under your name, right, Nate Parrish?
Yeah, I was like, should I come up with a band name? But I thought, well, no, if in case I keep putting out music into my 90s, I could just keep my same name. That's not going to change, right? So keep the name.
Great. Well, Nate, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been an amazing guest. How can people find you, connect with you, find your music?
Yeah. NateParrish.com is probably the easiest way. I'm active on social media, so you follow me on Instagram at the Nate Parrish, and I got music on all the stuff, YouTube, music videos, all that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, NateParrish.com would be the easiest.
Awesome. And of course, check out Kutless, check out his Spotify, Nate Parrish, check out Kutless on Spotify. And I will, of course, put links in the show notes to all those things. You can do that. And we're going to let you go. But before we do, we're going to ask you the 2 silly questions that I ask every guest.
Good.
You've been on tour, so you might have some interesting answers to the first one, which is, say a sentence or two and casually drop the name of the most famous person you've ever met.
Oh.
And I'll just warn you, my last guest was a chef in New York, and he had Bono bum a cigarette off of him. So
Wow. I don't think I could beat that. But for the Christian audience, this might help. Yeah. So, how would I do this? I have to put it in a sentence.
Just tell us a story.
Oh,
whatever.
okay. I thought you were trying.
Okay. No. Just tell us. I just don't want I don't want like a 10-minute. Just like a couple sentences. Yeah.
I went to a Carman concert before he passed. And, and the guy security said, "Oh, that's Nate from Kutless," and he was like, "Oh, I love your music," and gave me a hug. And here's the coolest part.
You met Carman?
I told him, I was like, "Man, I don't know if you know this or someone's told you, but the stuff you were doing paved the way for a lot of Christian music because you were pushing so many boundaries and doing so much stuff that you sort of paved the way for a lot of what bands, like we're doing now." And he started to cry.
No.
And he said, "No one's ever told me that." I was like, "What?"
Not only did you meet Carman, you made him cry?
Yeah, we compared tattoos.
No.
Yeah, there's a picture of it on my Instagram somewhere.
That's incredible.
It was pretty sweet though. And then he passed away like a year later or something. It was
that story. Yeah. That's one of the best stories we've got. That's an amazing story.
Take that, Bono.
If you're listening and you're maybe not a Christian believer, you don't know who Carman is, that's amazing. He's like the godfather of Christian music, man. Oh, man. Okay, and then this is the last one. We'll get you out of here. What is, in your opinion, the all-time greatest cartoon theme song?
Oh. All right.
I say this all the time. I would literally do a podcast that was just this.
You know what?
That's my favorite thing.
Let me give you a clue what I think it might be.
I saw.
It's He-Man. All it says in the whole song is He-Man. So it's the best.
I knew 40 minutes ago what the answer to this question was going to be.
There you go. It's right there.
Oh, man. I will say, though, we mentioned Batman and we mentioned the anime series, but my sister pointed out we did a theme song, animated cartoon theme song, like compilation wrap-up episode. And she mentioned the Batman Beyond theme song is an absolute banger. If you haven't listened to that one in a while, go check it out.
I'll check it out.
No, go listen to it, man. After this, go check it out on YouTube. It is an absolute banger. It's like total rock and roll.
Nice.
Check it out. Okay. Anyway, Nate, thank you so much for coming on. And everybody watching, this has been Adam from the N+1 podcast. Give us a like and subscribe. Share this episode with a friend. And until next time, don't be a jerk.